Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Joint Town Council, Parking Authority, and Redevelopment Agency meeting of the Town of Los Gatos for May 2nd, 2001. I'd request at the front end, would you please turn off your cell phones, put them on vibrate, and ask Madam Clerk to call roll.
Councilmember Stephen Leonardis.
Here.
Councilmember Barbara Spector.
Here.
Councilmember Diane McNutt.
Here.
Vice Mayor Steve Rice.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Joe Brzezinski.
Here. Now, as is our tradition, we have a member of our youth leader population join us for the pledge. And I'd like to introduce you tonight to Rod Farhadi. Rod is a sophomore at Los Gatos High School. He is a member of our Los Gatos Youth Commission. He has participated in a number of leadership activities, including the SCORE peer mediation team, a bullying workshop at Los Gatos High, and the Iranian Youth Leadership Camp. Rod's provided over 120 hours of community service in middle school, and he volunteers at the local elementary schools. He performs in musical theater and school choir, and he is a member of the badminton team. It says here, Rod likes to spend time with friends and perform in front of people, and he's joining a crowd that has the same kind of orientation here at the dais. So if you would, Rod, would you come forward, and let's welcome Rod to our dais. Would you stand for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Rod. Let's thank Rod. And Lynn, one more time, let's thank Rod for helping us out tonight. And now I'm going to go to the podium, and we will honor a couple more members of our community. This week in Los Gatos is Affordable Housing Week, and the Housing Trust of Santa Clara County and has encouraged us to proclaim this week, and we are so doing. We have two members of our community who are here with us, and I'm going to invite them forward. First is Kevin Ziwick, who's the Executive Director, and he will receive the proclamation. And we also have Stephanie Cass, who is the Senior Resident at Anway House, and she was one of the original groups at Anway in October 2009. If you'd both come forward. Hi. Good to meet you. Stephanie. Okay, I'm going to talk about this first. Yeah. All right. I'm going to read the proclamation. It's fairly extensive, but I think it really characterizes well the benefits of this particular housing authority for the town. Whereas Santa Clara County is home to more than 7,000 homeless individuals on any given night, at least 10% of whom are homeless children and youth. And whereas nearly 1/5 of the households in Los Gatos are classified as low or very low income and are unable to afford the median cost of a 1 or 2 bedroom rental unit in town, and home ownership is out of reach of many more households in Los Gatos, which has the second highest median home sales price in Santa Clara County. And whereas the Housing Trust of Santa Clara County has, during the last decade, invested $19 million and helped raise an additional $25 million to promote home ownership, prevent homelessness, and preserve affordable housing opportunities for working families, seniors, homeless youth, and special needs individuals, including nearly $550,000 to assist first-time home buyers and construct 2 new senior housing sites for seniors in the town of Los Gatos. And whereas more than 20 organizations and thousands of volunteers have partnered to offer 14 Affordable Housing Week activities to showcase the crucial value of and need for affordable housing in Los Gatos and Santa Clara County. Now therefore be it resolved, I, Joe Brzezinski, by the virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the town of Los Gatos, to deem it appropriate and do hereby proclaim April 30th, 2011 to May 7th, 2011, to be Affordable Housing Week within the town of Los Gatos, proclaimed this second day of May 2011 in the town of Los Gatos, county of Santa Clara, state of California. Congratulations. Now, Kevin is going to speak first, and then Stephanie is going to say a few words to us. Kevin?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Town Council. As Mayor Brzezinski was saying, this week is Affordable Housing Week. Right now in the county of Santa Clara and in the state of California, the demands for affordable housing have never been higher, but the 2 largest sources of funding for affordable housing are being threatened, both from the federal government and through redevelopment agencies being eliminated. So we're having this week, Affordable Housing Week, to highlight the importance of affordable housing in our community. I have to say the town of Los Gatos has some of the best policies on their books around affordable housing that a lot of other cities could learn from their housing policies, and they've been very supportive of affordable housing throughout the years. I wanted to invite everyone to come to the Silicon Valley Housing Summit this Wednesday. It's in Palo Alto. It's a one-day conference to talk about affordable housing issues, and that information's on our website at housingtrustscc.org. And I wanted to introduce Stephanie Koss, who is a resident of the Anway home, which is a home that both the town of Los Gatos and the Housing Trust have helped invest in to create affordable housing here in Los Gatos.
Okay, this house that I live in, it was really a blessing that I share it with. I have 3 other people in the house, and I mean, it's a beautiful home, and I just feel that I was very, my friends looked up on the computer and they helped me find it. And we made an arrangement because I was kind of, low income because I was looking for more work and whatever. And I think that a lot of people are probably in this situation right now. So, I mean, this house is really, a lifesaver for me. And, I kind of thank God every day that I, found this wonderful place to live. So thank you.
Really do appreciate both Kevin and Stephanie coming to us tonight to inform us of the great work of the Housing Trust of Santa Clara County and bring to awareness some of those things that we would not know without their help. So one more time, let's thank Kevin and Stephanie. Now we have another proclamation. We're in the midst of Building Safety Month. I think that we probably have maybe 10 or 12 different months going on during the month of May. And Building Safety Month today will be, the proclamation will be accepted by Michael Machado, who's our town building official. And if Mike would come forward, and I'll read the proclamation. All right. Again, this is a long read, but very significant. Whereas the town of Los Gatos' continuing efforts to address the critical issues of safety, energy efficiency, water conservation, and sustainability in the built environment that affects our citizens both in everyday life and in time of natural disaster help to ensure safe and sound community structures. And whereas building safety is achieved through the devotion of many public and private sector professionals, building safety and fire prevention officials, architects, engineers, builders, laborers, and others in the construction industry who work to ensure the safe and efficient construction of buildings. And whereas National Building Safety Month 2011 encourages Los Gatons to be aware of the importance of building safety, green and sustainable building, pool, spa, and hot tub safety, and new technological advances in the construction industry, and recognizes that countless lives have been saved due to the implementation of safety standards by local and state agencies. And whereas in observance of Building Safety Month, Los Gatons are asked to consider projects to improve building safety and sustainability at home and in their community, and to acknowledge the essential services provided to all of us by our local building department and construction professionals in protecting lives and property. Now therefore be it resolved, I, Joe Brzezinski, by virtue of the authority invested in me as the mayor of the town of Los Gatos, do deem it appropriate and do hereby proclaim the month of May 2011 as Building Safety Month within the town of Los Gatos, and call upon all citizens to renew their commitment to building safety efforts. Proclaim the second day of May 2011 in the town of Los Gatos, county of Santa Clara, state of California. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The town of Los Gatos has a terrific building division, which I'm proud to be a part of. I've worked in several jurisdictions as a contract official, and this team, along with the rest of the community development group, have really developed a very efficient system to provide great customer service to our community. We're here to help make everyone's building experience go as smoothly and efficiently as possible. During Building Safety Month, we'll have available some new handouts on topics such as how building codes help you and the benefits of building permits, as well as the new green building code and swimming pool safety. It used to be just Building Safety Week, but now there's so much more related to building safety that we utilize all 4 weeks of the month. Week 1 is energy and green building issues. Week 2 is disaster preparedness. Week 3, fire safety. And week 4 is devoted to backyard safety. So we encourage everyone to come down to our sit-down counter, ask a lot of questions, and we'll try to make building fun, safe, and rewarding from the outset. Thank you.
And Mike represents all of our staff working in the area of building safety. We are here to serve you, and I think that it's really significant. We recall our period of time during Loma Prieta when so many of our buildings, particularly in the downtown core, were damaged by that earthquake. And it probably reminds us to renew our own perspective on the safety of our homes and our businesses. There are so many things that we need to do, such as bolting the structure to the foundation, making sure that the water heater is strapped back, everything that you can find on our website when you go to emergency preparedness. And again, to remind us that that's one of the primary issues for us this year, is to make sure Los Gatos is a extremely safe community, because we know at a certain point we will have another major event, whether it's an earthquake or a wildland fire, and we need to be prepared for any eventuality. So again, thank you to our staff, and one more time, let's hear it for Michael and his team. All right, the next item on our agenda is our closed session report. Madam Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. The council met in closed session this evening on the matter listed on the agenda, conference with labor negotiator. The council took no action, and there's nothing to report out this evening.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is our council and town manager reports. But before we do that, I'd like to just remind everyone, if you wish to speak on an item on your agenda, then I'd ask you to fill out one of those buff cards and indicate the item you're going to speak on and bring it to our clerk, to my left, your right. If you intend to speak on something that's not on the agenda, we will do that during verbal communications, and we'd like you to do the same. Just fill out one of those buff cards, indicate verbal communications, and bring it to our clerk. All right, first, council matters. Any member of council wish to speak to an issue? Seeing none, manager matters.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, 3 items. First is a significant recognition that the town just received last week. We received the Grand Prize Award for Economic Development Promotions in 2010, the town of Los Gatos with the Los Gatos Chamber of Commerce for our second Saturday's promotion last year. And this award is a statewide award that we received from the California Association for Local Economic Development, the umbrella organization supporting and encouraging economic development throughout the state. And I want to single out and recognize Jessica Von Bork, our Economic Vitality Manager, who's with us tonight. Second, Parks and Public Works has 2 projects coming up this coming week that I wanted to inform the council and community. First is kind of a continuation of Arbor Day, which started last Friday. This coming Tuesday through Thursday, we will be planting 24 crepe myrtles on Highway 9 between Alberto and University Avenue. This is a completion of the cleanup project that was done a year ago, and now we're going back and planting 24 crepe myrtles as part of our ongoing beautification. 1 lane will be open in each direction and 1 lane will be closed in each direction from 10 to 3. So we're trying to avoid the rush hour times at that busy section of road from Alberto to University. Also, we will be completing the ADA retrofit and pathway at Oak Meadow Park the week of May 9th, and we're hoping the tot lot and other amenities will remain open throughout except for short-term closures when heavy grading equipment or the like is working in there. So those are 2 projects that will be wrapped up before your next council meeting. That concludes staff report, and now it's my honor to introduce the chair of our Youth Commission, Nick Robinson, who's going to be providing tonight's Did You Know on youth service on town commissions. Take it away, Nick.
All right. So, I'm Nick Robinson. Like town manager said, I'm chair of the Youth Commission. Can you see, or am I blocking this? Blocking this way? That's what I was afraid of. All right. Basically, the town is now accepting applications for student commissioners on multiple town commissions, including the Youth Commission, the Planning Commission, and the Community Services Commission. It's student commissioners on the Planning Commission and the Community Service Commission will be, pardon? On the Parks? I thought they must have planning. Okay. On the Parks Commission, sorry. On the Parks Commission and on the Community Service Commission, we'll be working with the rest of the commission. Each of those commissions is about 5 or 6 adults and then 1 or 2 youth, and they work together at all of the meetings, so it's just like a regular commission. The Youth Commission is another official town commission that consists of 15 youth, and it advises the town on all sorts of youth-related activities and needs. Over the past few years, we've done things such as inform the youth about the curfew. We started the youth-friendly business program with the Chamber of Commerce. You may have seen stickers about that around town. We've lately been working on some issues regarding teen stress and the land use in areas such as the North 40. So as a student commissioner, people will just advise the town council and the other commissions on the youth life in Los Gatos, so the town can make sure that they represent all the citizens equally. For anyone who wants to become a student commissioner, there's applications on the town website under boards and commissions, and they must be submitted by Friday, May 13th. So you can contact Ms. Rose for more information, and there's the URL if you want to write that down. And so, encourage anyone to apply or apply yourselves, and we'd love to see you. There's lots of openings. Thank you.
Great presentation. Anything else you want to say, Mr. Manager?
That concludes staff report.
Thank you. That brings us to the consent calendar. The consent agenda are those items that can be acted on in a single motion. I'd ask any member of council wish to pull an item from consent. Seeing none, any member of our public wish to pull an item? Seeing none, then I would ask that we take a motion from the council to approve the consent agenda. Not all at once.
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
The Vice Mayor moves approval. Is there a second? Councilwoman Spector raised her hand to take second. Second. Yeah. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. All right. The next item on our agenda is verbal communication. This is an opportunity for members of our public to speak for 3 minutes on items that are not on tonight's agenda. And we do have 3 individuals who would like to speak on items, and I'll call them in no particular order. The first is Tom Mangano. Mr. Mangano? And again, just for your information, it's a 3-minute time period. There are 3 lights. When the yellow light goes on, that means you have about 30 seconds. Mr. Mangano.
Tom Mangano, 112 Panorama Way. As most of you know who would talk to me, I've been involved with the 15928 Union project over the last 3.5 years. Last August, this body passed some actions, and part of that was an initial study that had exactly 1 mitigation and 1 monitoring point within that initial study. The contractor did not fulfill that mitigation, and the town did not fulfill its part of monitoring that mitigation. It took me 6 weeks to get that answer, and it was only until I wrote Mr. Larson, and Mr. Larson got me an answer in about 3 days later. I first went to the development department, I was sent to the engineering department, and I was sent to the arborist, and never received a definitive answer. It's funny that the Linda situation is happening tonight, but my concern is the only reason the initial study was done is because we had an expert in our street who pointed out to the city that the initial study had to be done. It was economically beneficial for the developer to do the study, so therefore the study was done. And it's really disappointing to me that the town did not fulfill its part of monitoring this. Now, I'm sure they'll give you a reason, but the basic fact is the town did not fulfill their obligation. So I'm disappointed. I'm also disappointed that it took me 6 weeks to get an answer. I don't think it should take a citizen 6 weeks to get an answer to a document that should have been a public document. But I'm really concerned about the town's seriousness of CEQAs and the ramifications of initial studies. I mean, I know it's a state requirement, and I know it's something we all have to do, but I look to the town, once an initial study is adopted, that the town stand by the mitigation and monitoring things that is part of Section 21081.6 of the CEQA. And I don't think that's happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mangano. The next speaker is Jeff Mitchell.
You look great, by the way, with the weight loss. You're keeping it off. Looks good.
Too much information.
Go
Thanks,
back
Jeff.
to the historical videos. Okay, so my name is Jeff Mitchell, 115 Panorama Way. Good evening, council members. I just wanted to also, like Tom, take a moment to communicate my frustrations with the way that the decisions unfolded during our 3.5-year battle over the development of the property at the end of Panorama Way. I've been a Los Gatos resident for over half of my life. In the last 3.5 years, I believe I've become very familiar with the Planning Commission and the Town Council and the process that it is intended to represent. In all frankness, I want to communicate that I think the process is extremely broken. The codes and guidelines and even some of your own re-election campaigns materials emphasized an interest in the concerns of the residents in the community. During these past years, we have made our concerns heard. We have pointed out several town codes and planning guidelines to support our concerns. We've made numerous presentations and submitted volumes of letters and supporting documents. I've come to believe that no matter how articulate or educated and vocal a group of citizens might be about their rational, reasonable objections to a proposal, that it really comes down to a subjective call being made by the Planning Commission, and at least in my experience, their decision being routinely overturned by this Town Council. The Town Council repeatedly looked at the development. They ignored our arguments regarding honoring town codes and guidelines and made decisions that I don't think are a reasonable use of the property. The direction given to the Planning Commission was perceived by them as having their hands tied. The approval of a 3,400 square foot house without their input completely changed the nature of their deliberation. And I'm still unclear as to how that move was allowed to happen in the first place. I want to recognize Council Members Spector and Lenardis for having given our concerns what I thought was reasonable deliberation and consideration. And as for the rest of you, with all due respect, I feel that you have let me down and you have let our neighborhood down. The developer who will walk away from this a year or two from now with the profits from selling 3 McMansions that degrade the character of our street will be the only person to really gain from this being allowed to move forward. I entered this process inspired and with faith in the political process, somewhat like Jefferson Smith in the classic Frank Capra film. I leave it disheartened with little belief that the needs and requests of the community carry nearly enough weight or importance to this elected body than, to quote Citizen Ray, the almighty dollar. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. And the last speaker card for verbal communication is Larry Arzi. And again, if you do want to speak under verbal communication, then bring a buff card to our clerk, Mr. Arzi.
Good evening. In case some of you don't know me, my name is Larry Arzi. I am a commercial property owner in the Central Business District, and I would like to thank you, of which I've thanked you in the past, for increasing my property values by allowing professional businesses to kick out retail stores in downtown Los Gatos. It's simple math. They can afford to pay higher rents. Higher rents mean increased property values. In case you haven't been updated yet, we've gotten rid of 2 more prime retail locations last month in Los Gatos, one at 130 North Santa Cruz Avenue, the other at 10 Station Way. Both these locations were successful small retail shops for many years. By allowing staff to let the primary service operations in without CUP hearings is just great. Keep up the good work. It goes against the intent of the general plan, but you guys know how to make it look like it's being done for the benefit of the community. Wink, wink. The Chamber of Commerce has leased the rug shop at 10 Station Way. What a coup. They got it for less than half the going rate. Any retailer in Los Gatos would have loved to have that location. American Wireless leased the shop at 130 North Santa Cruz Avenue, next to Williams-Sonoma. I doubt more than 20% of their sales are retail, as they primarily sell prepaid phones and Sprint services. Certainly the Chamber is not a retail store, and when they were allowed to move on to Santa Cruz Avenue 10 years ago, it was because we thought it was good for our business and at a poor retail location. Certainly they don't represent the small merchants in Los Gatos, thank God. Again, thank you for making it possible for the commercial property owners in Los Gatos to lease at $4, $5, and $6 a square foot. Thank you for allowing me to sell downtown property at the highest rates ever listed in Los Gatos. Keep up the good work so that soon I'll be able to make another killing by pulling the rug out from under the Los Gatos Museum Art Gallery when we sell that property. 30 seconds to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arze. I believe that concludes verbal communication. I've seen no one else come forward with a card requesting such. So that brings us then to our public hearings. And we have 3 public hearings tonight. 2 public hearings, and we will start with a consideration to expand an existing restaurant that's Cardino's. It's zoned C2, and there's a conditional use permit application U10023, and the property is located at 49 to 51 North Santa Cruz Avenue. The property owner is Jennifer White. The applicant is Pete Gillo. We have a staff report from Jennifer Savage.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be recusing myself from this matter. My law firm, Hoag, Fenton, Jones, and Appel, has represented a participant in these hearings, and in order to avoid the appearance of bias, I will be recusing myself. Thank you.
Okay, but you will come back later, I assume. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, Ms. Savage.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. The applicant is requesting to expand the existing restaurant at 51 North Santa Cruz Avenue into the space at 49 North Santa Cruz Avenue to add seating, full alcoholic beverage service, and to modify the hours of operation. The project appears to conflict with the hours of operation allowed by the alcoholic beverage policy because the applicant is proposing to close 1 hour later than the policy allows, Sundays through Thursdays. The existing, proposed, and policy allowed hours are available on this slide. The project appears to conflict with the town's policy regarding additional restaurant use in the downtown because the applicant is requesting to expand into a space previously occupied by a retail use. The Planning Commission considered the application on April 13th and recommended approval of the project as proposed. The recommendation was based on the findings that the proposal was desirable to the public, does not impair the integrity of the zone, would not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare, and encourages a mix of uses, small town character, and existing businesses. The Planning Commission found the community benefit offered by the applicant sufficiently addressed the increased traffic impact. Staff provided an additional condition in your staff report to ensure the applicant provides that community benefit. This concludes staff presentation, and staff is available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Savage. Questions for Ms. Savage? Seeing none, we can go to our public, and we have an opportunity to hear from the applicant. This would be Greg Kays. Yes, Mr. Kays. Please introduce yourself for our public, and you would have 10 minutes to speak to this item.
Thank you. My name is Greg Kays. I'm here to speak on behalf of Pete Gillo. As I suspect you know, I spoke for Pete in front of the Planning Commission when we had that hearing. Initially, I would like to say that the amount of support that this request has gathered from the community has been large. We had a number of speakers at the Planning Commission, all of whom spoke in favor of this expansion. We submitted a list of nearly 500 signatures of people who also support this proposed expansion. I think many of you are aware, perhaps not all of you, Gardino's is a long-standing restaurant in the downtown area. They have been serving beer and wine alcohol service with their meals for some 18 or 19 years. There has never been a single incident of concern, a crime report or anything from the Los Gatos Police Department. There has never been any disciplinary action taken against the license by the Alcoholic Beverage Commission. This has been a clean, good, solid operation for all those years. The neighboring tenant to Pete was a retail store, Los Gatos Baby. That owner had another location across the street, and she decided to consolidate her operations into just the one store across the street. So it was not a matter of Pete, in any sense, forcing her out. This was a decision on the part of that tenant who had two stores in the Los Gatos area. The expansion that Pete proposes to do will simply be to open the wall between the two spaces that exist right now and expand into that area. This will have a number of benefits both inside the building as well as outside. Gardino's does a substantial business, both takeout and sit-down. If you've been in the restaurant, you know it's a little bit cramped. There really is no waiting area, and there really is no designated pickup area. So that sort of operation gets juggled in the sense that people who want to wait to eat there end up on the street out in front of the restaurant, and they end up doing the takeout as best they can amongst the tables and against where the kitchen area is. This expansion is going to create a new designated waiting area. It will create a new designated pickup area so that those functions can be handled inside the restaurant at much greater comfort to both the people waiting as well as the people dining, as well as the pedestrians passing by on the street who perhaps that night are choosing not to go into Gardino's. But in essence, what this is going to do is really open up things inside the restaurant. It's also going to provide a very nice exterior, which will be one common front, and that, I believe, is explained in the materials that have been submitted to you as to what's proposed to be done outside. So this is an expansion that is a natural expansion for a very good, solid business, longtime Los Gatos supporter, who has demonstrated a great ability to operate within all the rules and regulations that apply. We had an extensive public hearing before. I suspect all that material is in front of you. I know we have some more speakers tonight. If there's any specific questions I can answer for you, I'd be happy to do that now, and simply sit down and wait for my next turn if that's needed.
All right. I think we have an opportunity to ask Mr. Case some questions. And this concludes the time frame at the initial presentation. Councilwoman McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two questions, and one refers to the diagram of the new layout. You don't seem to have that with you. Is it possible that staff might have it, the A2 diagram that we could put up on the screen, or no?
Yes.
Yeah.
Answer is yes.
While they're messing around with technology, maybe I'll ask you the other question.
The non-technical question?
The non-technical question. It's regarding your proposed hours of operation.
Yes.
We recently had two applications in the downtown for hours of operations that exceeded the alcohol beverage policy. And the question we posed to them was, why should you get an exception? What's special? And they figured out that they weren't. And we've been quite firm about staying with the alcohol beverage policy. So here's my question to you. Why are you special that you needed an exception for that extra hour?
The restaurant gets a lot of requests for late-night dining. And at the Planning Commission hearing, a number of people spoke to the need and the desire to have that late-night dining. In the instance of Gardino's, it's nearly immediately adjacent to the theater. And a number of patrons do leave the theater and want to dine at Gardino's. And so what we want to do, what Gardino's wants to do, is provide service to those patrons who are already there, who would like to simply come out and go next door for a late night bite. And so it's the amount of requests that we have received from the public. We're simply trying to provide that service that we get from our customers, the feedback we get.
Okay, and my next question is, well, there's two parts to this. Can you point out for me, and the microphone does come off the stand if you want to walk with it, where this waiting area is, and also explain to me the counter, which looks remarkably like a bar.
Okay, well, can you see, on the right-hand side, do you see the words food pick?
Yes. Food pickup?
Yes.
Food pickup area?
Food pickup area, and immediately below that is the door into the restaurant.
Uh-huh.
So, oh. That's the pickup location. That's the door. This is the designated waiting area. So the patrons will enter here, and if they're going to do pickup, they would just go right there. And as to the food service counter, this is actually something that if in the restaurant business, there's sort of a trend now towards more, I don't want to call it quick dining, but you do see several restaurants have now moved to an area where they can have the quick turnover, the single diner, the party of two. And so the food service counter does allow for that person that wants to come in, just grab lunch, just grab dinner. And I think if you even notice a lot of your grocery stores now, even Fresh and Easy that we've had now come into the area, they specialize in that convenient dinner where you basically just go grab it, throw it in the microwave, and it's not SpaghettiOs. It's a very nice meal. And so what you've seen in the restaurant business trending lately is a lot of people want to have this sort of food service counter. You use the word bar. We all know that the town of Los Gatos will require food service with all diners. You can't simply go into Gardino's and go up there and start drinking cocktails. You have to be there for dinner. You need to order food, and the town policy specifies that. So this is more, I mean, does it look like a bar? Sure, it looks like a bar, but it's not being treated like a bar.
And if I could just clarify, Mayor, so the waiting area for people waiting for a table is the same as the waiting area for people doing food pickup to go?
Well, no. This area from that door all the way to that wall, that entire area that I'm kind of circling, that's a waiting area. That area right there, which is basically just the end of the food service counter, people can just go stand there to pick up their food and go. In this area, we would expect to have some seats that people could sit in while they wait. I mean, it's possible that there'll be, I mean, depending upon how crowded it is, yeah, it may get a little tight. But if you look at the existing restaurant, I mean, cut that in half, there is no such area, either for pickup or for waiting. So I think this will really enhance the look and the feel of the restaurant. And again, I think it not only improves what goes on inside, but if you have a number of people standing out here waiting outside, you know, I mean, it could interfere with pedestrian flow, I suppose.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, other questions? Councilmember Leonardis?
Mr. Case, on your diagram here, I see a remodeled restroom in the back on the left side.
Yes.
And then I see the existing restroom on the right. That doesn't look like it's accessible except through the food storage area. Is that going to be designated as an employee-only restroom, the one on the right, and then there'll be a shared restroom for both sexes?
Yes, I believe that's true, and this is going to be an ADA-compliant bathroom, So this will be completely redone here, completely updated. This bathroom is going to be completely demoed and brought up to ADA standards.
Okay. And one other question I have for you is regarding the existing kitchen configuration. If you're going to be serving so many more tables, patrons, customers, etc., are there any planned upgrades for the kitchen? Do you, for instance, have to increase refrigeration capacity, increase stove, increase dishwashers? What
No,
plans are there for that?
I don't believe any of that's going to be required. What you are picking up on this side of the food service counter is some storage area on this side, not necessarily prep area, and I believe that this is going to alleviate some of the, because everything is stored here now, stored in this location. So this entire back section of the food service counter is going to have areas where things can be stored. So I think that's going to alleviate some of that problem.
Logistically speaking, the food service counter, it seems like there should be a sink or a dishwasher or something included in that area.
Yeah, there's going to be new plumbing run to that area.
Okay. Do you know if that would include a dishwasher or just a sink or any?
There'll be a new, Mr. Gillo told me there'll be a dishwasher here.
Okay.
So all the new plumbing that'll be run will be cut in and put, behind, again, down below this counter area. So, yeah, you will have dishwasher and other areas to handle the increased utensils and plates and whatever.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Mr. Case, I'd like to go back to the question that Councilmember McNutt raised regarding the food service counter. You've given 10 of your additional seats to the counter. The expectation being that those 10 will be used primarily for people who want to dine solo or like to eat at the counter. Where is the alcohol service? Where is your alcohol going to be placed in this restaurant?
Okay, right now, the alcohol that's placed to where the public can see it.
Yeah.
And I'll just use this diagram. Right now, that is right in that area in a cooler or above it, and then there is some in the back. With the food service counter, it's expected that it would be placed along the back here, so that whatever the food service order, if the order comes in for whatever, beer, wine, or a cocktail, it's expected that this would also act as the bar area for the making of that drink or the serving of that to the server to take to the table. Mm-hmm. And I just want to make one modification to the preamble to your question. The food service counter is not just for singles, it's for singles and doubles. Right now, the restaurant basically has tables of 4 or larger, so that if they have a table of just 2 people come in, inevitably they take a table of 4. So it's hoped that a number of the patrons who are, singles and certainly some of the doubles will actually take advantage of the counter area as well.
Okay. But the way you describe the placement of the alcohol and the mixing drinks and so forth, it's going to make that look pretty much like a bar.
Well, it may look like a bar, but as I said before, town rules are very strict. No alcohol service without a meal. And Gardino's has always followed town rules and will follow town rules.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Case? Thank you, Mr. Case. Would you be willing to take your seat, and then we will offer you the opportunity to come up for another 5 minutes when we're done. I have a number of cards, and we want to hear everyone. The 3-minute rule is in effect. If for some reason what you have to say is similar to something that someone said before you, you can reference back to that individual. If you choose not to take your entire 3 minutes, that would be certainly your prerogative and might help us move things along a little faster, but do not want to make it anyway it seem that you must must come in under your 3 minutes. So I'm going to name probably the first 3 people who are going to speak, so that after the first one, the next 2 are kind of primed and ready to go. First up will be Jennifer McCrae, followed by Joanne Smith and Wayne Hossinglow. Okay, so Jennifer McCrae.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Town Council. My name is Jennifer McCrae. I own Canebrick of Los Gatos. It's a women's retail clothing store in Los Gatos, right in the downtown district, 100 North Santa Cruz Avenue. I've owned this store for 9 years now. It's been there for 17 years. Not in that same location, but we've been downtown the whole time. I'm in opposition to Gardino's expanding into a retail location because I feel that a lot of the mom and pop smaller retail shops are getting pushed out of town. If it's not for the high rents, it's because they're getting taken over by restaurants. And I know it just happened with Restaurant James Randall expanding into a retail location. I know this bike shop, I think it was Summit Bicycles, was just converted into a wine bar. Years ago, Talbot's moved into where a designated restaurant, was designated for a restaurant. It was the market that took over. So slowly this is happening. And I feel like the town's not following in its ordinances because they're set to create a certain look of the town. And I just feel like the rules aren't getting followed. And if we start converting these small, affordable retail locations into restaurant space, what's going to be left in the town are large spaces that mom and pop shops cannot afford, like the Domus spot now, and where the Gap Kids is. Mom and pop shops can't afford those kind of rents. So you're going to be left with a town of restaurants and large retail spaces and no smaller spaces for new, vibrant mom and pop retail shops to move into. My previous location before I moved into my location now was about 900 square feet. I bought the business 9 years ago from somebody. That's what they could afford going into town 17 years ago. So I'm just concerned that it's changing the landscape of the town. It's nothing against Gardino's. I just hate to see another small retail spot get moved into a different capacity.
Thank you, Ms. McCrae.
Thank you.
Joanne Smith.
Good evening, Town Council. My name is Joanne Smith. I live at 120 Carlton Avenue. I work downtown in a retail location, and I agree in one sense that the face of retail is changing. What we once knew as retail has been largely influenced by internet sales. I know in our store a lot of the sales have gone to internet catalog sales. So retail is changing, and we can't stop that. We can't stop how it's been, evolving. And so I think it's going to be important to consider other options that, as we negotiate what that's going to look like in the future. Another thing I want to talk about in relation to the Gardino's is this request reasonable? And looking, if we've all eaten at Gardino's, we know it really is small. It's very cramped. And so, and also looking at this and what this gentleman said, I see even more that I feel it is a reasonable request to open up, to expand, to have a waiting area, take out things. So looking at the issue, I think is the request reasonable. And the third thing that I'd like to say is it going to be good for the community? And, we are all concerned that places are closing up. I had one lady come into the store today and she goes, oh my gosh, Borders is gone and Domus is gone. So this is very unsettling to the people here. And I think if the community sees that an established place is putting down more roots, I think it could be comforting to know that there is still growth here. There is still, someone that's going to stay. Not everyone is leaving. So I know we are all looking forward to welcoming new businesses, and we're very sad to see the ones that have served us so many years to leave. But I think we need to consider how important it is to support those who remain. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Wayne Hossinglup. And before Wayne speaks, Joe Caviglia, Michael Petzel, and Carol Waite will be the next up. Wayne.
I just wanted to come in and just voice my opinion. The request that Gardino's is making is reasonable, my opinion. I think it's a great restaurant. I think it's an asset to Los Gatos. And I think it actually is one of the smallest restaurants in town. So I'm in full support of the expansion and the change in the restaurant that they want to do.
Thank you very much. Joe Caviglia.
Good evening, Town Council. My name is Joe Caviglia, and I've lived in Los Gatos area for nearly all my life. It's a pleasure to dine at Gardino's nearly every week. I come from a very large Italian family, so it's not uncommon to see most of my family take up the majority of Gardino's seating, and I believe the expansion would be great, not only for my family, but for all of the great families of Los Gatos. It's very common to run into much of the community down at his restaurant. There's a great community atmosphere. He treats you like family. The whole family that's here supporting him demonstrates that. You'll hear a lot of good comments from a lot of good people, and I think it's necessary for the expansion, not only to serve families like mine, but everyone in the community. So I'm in strong favor of helping his business, who has also been a staple of the Los Gatos community for about 19 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Caviglia. Michael Pelzel.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Mike Pelzel. I'm the CFO of the Diabetes Society, and I'm here to support Pete because I feel he's a really strong community member. I know that he has supported my organization recently and also a number of organizations. I grew up in this town. I went to St. Mary's for 8 years growing up, and I remember back then Los Gatos every Friday night was full. Businesses were full, everyone was happy, and then Santana Row came around, and it's hurt the town. And I think it's important to note that Santana Row is owned by a Wall Street real estate investment trust, and this town is owned by its citizens, and Pete's one of the citizens. And I think that he is a great citizen, and I think that what he's doing is responsible, and it will help this town. This town has run a deficit, and I think that it's important to note that things like this will help that, and help bring more police officers to this town, help make it a better place to live, cleaner, help people want to live here. And I think that it's important to note that all these things can happen as long as there's a vitality in Los Gatos, and I think Pete represents that vitality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pizzell. Carol Waite, and Carol will be followed by Pamela Murphy, Lotus Mahan, and Ginger Rowe.
Hello, my name is Carol Waite, and I live at 19 Glenridge Avenue, and I've lived in Los Gatos for almost 19 years. And I've been going to Gardino's with my family throughout those 19 years, and I think one of the things that nobody really has mentioned is that it's one of the few family-friendly restaurants in downtown Portland that is affordable to go to, really, besides Willow Street. And it has an atmosphere that has always welcomed children, and there's not that many in downtown that do anymore. So I do want to bring that up. I also would like to say that I fear for every sort of business, whether it's a restaurant or retail, that has been around for a long time in Los Gatos, downtown Los Gatos. I fear for them, and that's maybe just the way life is right now, and things do change. But it's important that these businesses stay competitive, and I think in order to stay competitive, Gardino's needs to be able to expand. So and that's about it.
Thank you. And I was not aware Gardeno's had a second store in Portland. Congratulations. Pamela Murphy. Understood.
Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Pam Murphy, and I live downtown, 129 Edelin Avenue, and I am in favor of Pete expanding his restaurant due to the fact that I do have 7 grandchildren, and we do frequent the restaurant, and they do play right on the street. You know, the traffic is trying to come back or by, and everybody's like just hanging out outside. So to have the expansion would be fabulous. But I also support the later hours. I think that the Los Gatos rolls up the streets about 9:30, 10 o'clock. It'd be really nice to go someplace and have a cocktail after the kids go to bed or after like 9:30 at night. Steamers is closed. Every place closes down so early. So I really strongly support his hours. There aren't any really good restaurants or bars to go to late at night. You have to just go home and starve. Thank you.
That's a good one. I like that. Lotus Mann.
Hi, Mr. Mayor and Town Council. I'm Dr. Lotus Mahon. I'm a dentist by profession. I live at 242 University Avenue. I've been there about 17 years. I'm a graduate of Saratoga High School, and I've been in the area well over 40 years. One of the reasons I stayed in this area, I went away to university and came back, and I practiced in the area. One of the reasons I came back here was specifically because of that feeling of small town and community in Los Gatos. And to me, one of the things for me is I work late, often come home late at night, and I don't feel like cooking, and I will order takeout or go into a restaurant. And just as Pamela mentioned, frequently, even if restaurants are open until 10, if they're not busy, they close the kitchen at 9:30, and I have had time and time again when I show up there and they say, well, we've already closed the kitchen, you can't get anything. So I strongly support the later hours. Right now, Opa's is the only one that's open later, and they're fabulous, but it's the only one. And I know that Athena, who's the head hostess there, said they would welcome having another restaurant that was open later hours. So for me, that would be a big asset. In addition to that, I too feel the disconcerting. I'm disturbed that Domus is leaving. This is a long-standing establishment. I don't know if my information is correct, but my understanding was the building was sold and the new owners had doubled their rent and they couldn't support that. And we've seen a lot of turnover of those types of things in the town. What I don't want to see is more big chains coming in that I can find at any mall USA. I want to keep the character of the small town and the mom and pop. So as our first speaker said, her concern about maintaining it affordable and competitive, I agree with. What I disagree with is that, to me, Gardeno's is a mom and pop place. And for them to expand, they are staying within the same building. They're not, the retail space that supposedly was there, well, not supposedly was there, that's not a retail that's leaving. We're keeping that business. Nothing's been squeezed out, but it is taking a mom and pop place and supporting it, and in my opinion, improving the character of our town rather than diluting it. So thank you.
Thank you. Ginger Rowe. And Ginger Rowe is going to be followed by Susan Testa and Jessica, and I'll get back to Jessica in a second. Ginger.
Hi, my name is Ginger Rowe, and I own Time Out Clothing at 108 North Santa Cruz Avenue. I have been a retail owner for 17 years in downtown and worked in downtown for 22 years. I feel that the town really needs to maintain diversity in the district. It needs to keep the mix unique, interesting, and keep the small town character. I have nothing against Gardino's, but when it was time for me to grow and move, I had to move my location. Any overconcentration of one of the uses in this downtown can be detrimental. We need to continue to improve our vibrant downtown. We need to focus on balancing what is located in downtown. We're faced with several large unoccupied spaces open in town, and I understand that it was a retail space, but that becomes a very large retail space. I mean, the space that they occupy becomes a much larger space. The small space that they want to take over is a very nice, small location that is conducive for other retail. And I know that other retail operations have gone there and tried to rent the space. So it's not that it's not a rentable space. I hate to eliminate viable retail spots. It will change the balance of the town. I hate to see Los Gatos become Saratoga, that is now all restaurants, no retail, and service-oriented businesses. We need to keep the character of this town, what we have now to maintain. We are all fighting, and it's getting better in this town, much better than it has been the last 2 years, and I don't want to see all these changes in spaces to change the whole dynamic of the town.
Thank you. Susan Testa.
My name is Susan Testa. I live at 17599 Bruce Avenue. I was raised in Los Gatos, and I'm raising my family here. I have owned and operated a retail business for the last 17 years in Los Gatos. I enjoy Gardino's restaurant and visit them. Wish them only the best. I know they are an independent business, and I'm glad they are thriving in Los Gatos. However, I felt it was imperative that I speak tonight regarding the threat of eliminating a smaller, somewhat affordable retail space in order to convert it into a larger space for a restaurant. I think this expansion and conversion will negatively change the dynamic mixture of retail, restaurant, and other services in a critical area of downtown Los Gatos. One space that a small independent retailer could have rented will forever be no more. I'm afraid that in a few short years, my friends and I will ask ourselves what happened in Los Gatos. Where have all the cute, unique stores disappeared to? Will there only be formula stores and restaurants left in the downtown area? There are a lot of changes in store for Los Gatos over the next few years that I'm not in favor of. This is just one small issue that can change the landscape of our downtown. If one small space can be eliminated and converted into a different use, what is to stop the landlord down the street from doing the same thing? You will be setting a precedent for that kind of change if you approve converting a retail space in order to expand a restaurant tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker card, so this is a hint for anyone who wants to speak and has not turned in a card yet, is Jessica Ibrahimian. Ibrahimian, pretty close.
Hi, Town Council. I'm Jessica Ibrahimian. I've been a resident in Los Gatos for 28 years. I am strongly in favor of Gardino's expanding. I have been a customer for many years and would like to share personally why I believe they deserve to grow. We all go out to eat to enjoy family, friends, business, and just get away momentarily from the everyday stress life brings. There is an expectation that varies with each individual as to what they expect when going out for a pleasant evening. My personal expectations are considerably high, being that I grew up in the restaurant business, and there is only one restaurant thus far that I can say exceeds my expectations time and time again, and that is Gardino's. Where can you go out to eat and not only get spectacular Italian food that is always consistently fresh, but from the moment you walk in the door, you are greeted by Mr. Gillo, the owner himself, who will ask you how your day has been and spark up interesting, fun conversation. A place where the owner treats you like family, truly cares about how you're feeling that day, and gives a personal touch to each patron that walks through the front door. No matter how your mood is walking in, you will always walk out with a smile on your face, great conversation, and an amazing meal to top it off. This is what I call the true dining experience. Mr. Gillo has an ever-growing clientele and increasing repetitive business because he consistently delivers an extraordinary dining experience. He has such love and passion for what he does, and his customers definitely recognize this. His vivacious personality brings a unique experience that has created much popularity throughout the last 18 years he has been in business. And for this reason alone, I believe Mr. Gillo should be granted the additional space to keep up with the ever-growing clientele of so many people who enjoy his restaurant daily and the new customers that discover this truly rare gem in the town of Los Gatos. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I believe we have no more cards. So we're going to invite Mr. Kays back to the mic. Mr. Kays, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm just going to try and speak to what the public spoke to. I don't recall, even though there were questions about the hours from the council, I don't recall any speaker really addressing that hours question as an issue. It's really the concept of changing retail to restaurant. And so let's talk about that. Before we went to the Planning Commission, Mr. Gillo and I took a rather long walk around the town and identified several vacant spots for retail. It's not that there are not those spots there, because there are those spots. Perhaps some are too large, but there is a variety of sizes that are there right now. And we're not really talking about, and I believe I mentioned this in my earlier remarks, the retailer that was there is not leaving the town. The retailer had 2 sites and now has chosen to operate from one, still in the town of Los Gatos. So we're taking, it's in essence, you can think of it as 1,000 square feet becoming 2,000 square feet. That's not a precise measurement, but it's close enough for what we're talking about. So the town has this policy that is to discourage this change in character from retail to restaurant. It's great. You have that policy. You have that policy so that you can control it. You have that policy so that you can manage it. You don't have that policy so that you don't get that request brought to you. It's not a policy that says thou shalt not do it. It's a policy that says we're going to take a look at it. Maybe you'll get it, maybe you won't. And so I think what we're talking about here is a policy that's designed to be flexible. Someone used the phrase, the changing face of retail. Retail is changing. All you have to do is walk up and down the street or drive around town and you'll see the changing face of retail. So it's a policy, and I believe several of the commissioners at the Planning Commission were quite vocal in suggesting that maybe it's a policy that needs to be looked at, maybe needs to be defined, maybe needs to be redefined. But I think the policy that's in front of you today does not prohibit Gardino's request. It simply asks you to look at it and to judge it. The Planning Commission did that, and the Planning Commission approved it by a vote of 4-2. So I'm not going to say that I'm familiar with all the retail spots in Los Gatos, because I'm not. But it's a town that has always had a variety of retail and always had a fair amount of retail. I think it's going to continue that way. And I think that the policy that the town has had in place for some time now, which I believe came in after the earthquake, and my understanding of the policy is it was originally designed to prevent office space from taking over retail or restaurant space, and it's now kind of evolved. But basically, this policy does not say you can't do it. It just says we're going to take a close look at it. And I think it's had its close look, and I think it's deserving of your support. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Thank you. Council, questions for Mr. Kays? Thank you, Mr. Kays.
Great. Thank you.
And that will close the public hearing. And I look to the council and staff. Staff, any further clarifications before the council begins its dialogue?
No.
All right. So, council, open for discussion or a motion? Councilmember McNutt.
No, not a motion at this point. I have to tell you, this is one of the most difficult issues that I can remember for some time. And it starts with the reason that no one has mentioned tonight, nor was it mentioned at the Planning Commission, and that is that the CUP does not go to Gardino's and does not go to the lovely Mr. Gillo. It goes with the land. So you have to separate out, a really great business and great contributor versus the land use decision. And that's always something that's so hard to do because you want to vote with your heart and you have to pay attention to what your head is saying in doing the analysis. There's been reference to other restaurant expansions that have occurred, and we do have Ordinance 2120. And to me, as Mr. Case said, it does not say thou shalt not. It says you should consider. So under what circumstances should you consider an expansion into retail space? So I think what we have looked at before as criteria would be you need to increase the vitality in a particular area of downtown, or it's not a space that's really viable for retail, or the restaurant that currently exists there is not configured in a way that makes it a sustainable business model. So if you take those criteria and you apply it to this particular situation, it's not looking good for Mr. Gillo and for Gardino's, because certainly that is one of the most vital areas of our downtown already. It is a space that's good for retail, as the fact that it's been successful as retail. And it's hard to make the case that a restaurant that's been doing so well for 20 years all of a sudden needs to have additional seats in order to keep going in a successful way. So, you start balancing. Now, I hear the comments from the community about the support for a mom and pop, and the person who mentioned that it was Dr. Mann, that this is a mom and pop operation. It's like, yes, that's true. We need to preserve our mom and pop operations, and this is one. It just happens to be a restaurant. So I'm really struggling with this. A couple other points, Mayor, if you don't mind, I want to make while I still have them on my mind. One is this whole concept of the changing face of retail, and in the Planning Commission discussion, it was even pronounced that retail is dead. Now, if you've ever driven past Santana Row or Valley Fair parking lot, I, of course, never go in there myself, but, there are people that are out shopping, and we see it. We certainly saw it this last weekend in Los Gatos. It's a changing type of retail. Many of your commodity purchases are made online, but what the online shopping cannot do for you is that shopping experience. And as I was Googling around over the weekend about trends in retail, and is retail dead or is retail threatened, one of the analogies that I really liked in one of the business publications was the movie theater versus the home entertainment, the DVD or on demand. You can get all of your movies on demand. You can get them from lovely Netflix. We certainly want to support Netflix whenever we can. But people still go to the movie theater because it's a different experience. And that's the unique asset that we have in our downtown retail. The shopping experience you have in downtown Los Gatos, because of the natural beauty, because of the historic buildings, because of the mix and the number of unique shops that we are able to boast about, is what bring people here, and that cannot ever be replicated with a movement of your mouse and clicking away on making a purchase online. Yes, there is a lot of change in our retail, and some of it is absolutely heart-wrenching to lose some of those businesses for a lot of different kinds of reasons. But what you can't know by just walking around and looking at an empty space or a for-lease space is the amount of interest there is in that space. And we get reports from our economic vitality manager, who's shaking her head, yes, that as soon as a space opens up, there is a lot of interest. So it takes a while to get those negotiations completed, to get the tenant improvements, but we are not a blighted area. And I don't think we should in any way be putting out any hint of that message out to the public. The last couple of things is in answer to the question that may or may not have been posed from Planning Commission. I don't remember it exactly that way, but, does this policy need to be redefined or gotten rid of or something? I would say no. If anything, we need to really look at it, because our asset is in jeopardy with all of the changes, which is why Council 2 weeks ago took action to put an extra level of scrutiny in on any of the changes, because we do recognize how important it is. So, to summarize, I am really back and forth here. I'm looking forward to hearing what other council members have to say. If we go forward with it, I would like to talk some more about the counter bar situation, and I really have not heard a good argument for going against the alcohol beverage policy for extending the hours later than what we allow and later than everyone else. And OPA closes at 11 also. I just looked it up quickly when we were listening to the folks.
Thank you,
So,
Councilmember
thank you.
McNutt. Vice Mayor?
Like Councilwoman McNutt, I am probably more conflicted with this than any decision I can think of off the top of my head. Ideally, you would love to make these kinds of decisions in a vacuum without regard to the applicant themselves because, as the Councilwoman mentioned, this is not really about a specific operator. It's about a conditional use permit that will run with the land forever. I have eaten at Gardino's for more years than I can remember, and I enjoy it. It's a great business. It's a great contributor to the town, but that's just part of the equation. I think the overriding concern is maintaining the diversity and the vitality of our downtown. The fact that some property owners may be raising rents unreasonably for local businesses or independent operators might serve to be emboldened if we allow higher rent-paying businesses to occupy spaces. And our job as a council is to make sure that we maintain the economic vitality of our downtown. We all witness other downtowns that have suffered significantly by straying from that mission. To the Planning Commission and their deliberations, I appreciated a lot of what they had to say, although I tend to concur the whole conversation around retail being dead was a little disconcerting because there was a lot of anecdotal conversation and nothing in the way of hard fact. And some of the things that, to me, were important about this application were completely ignored, one of which being you call it a food service counter, but if it walks like a duck, looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And in this case, it's a bar. I understand the intent is to not serve alcohol there, but somebody walking by, looking in, sees alcohol behind the counter, they're going to look at it and go, that's a bar. And I would not want to put any business owner in the position of having somebody come in, sit down at their food service counter, order a drink, and then say, oh, by the way, you have to order food. It's an operational and logistical nightmare, for lack of a better word. I think I'm going to stop there, and I want to hear from the other two members up here of the council and see if there's something that can come from this that I can support. I'll also concur with Councilman McNutt. I have not heard a justification for anything in the way of hours that would exceed the existing alcohol policy.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Rice. Councilmember Leonardis.
This one's difficult, as was mentioned by the previous two council members, but also some members of the audience, being that these small retail spaces are being eliminated, and this is kind of like entry-level housing for retailers. This is where you get your start. This is where you get a chance to grow. Typically, these are unique businesses, mom-and-pop stores, moms in town starting their own businesses. With that said, you know, looking at Gardino's, I feel like the space is outmoded for what it is as its own restaurant. You know, you have to walk through the kitchen to get to the restroom. There's no ADA compliant restroom that I'm aware of. It is a very small space. There is no waiting area. And this gentleman's been in our community for 18 years, and he's trying to do well for himself and try to expand his business. And I find it difficult to say no to someone who has been in our community so long and wants to, he started small and he wants to grow. Basically, you're sending a message to the business community that you can't come to Los Gatos and grow your business. It's okay if you remain, as long as you remain small. I feel like there's a lot of greater issues as well. One being, you know, the general state of the economy, of course, although that seems to be turning around. One being that it seems as though when there is a retail space open next door to a small restaurant, that retail space does seem to be endangered. So perhaps that ordinance needs to be amended, or we need to put a moratorium on that, this happening, and because there's a cumulative effect. If it happens 4 or 5 times, then you have 4,000 or 5,000 square feet of retail that disappears, and it disappears in little places all around. But those are all retail spaces that add up to be quite a bit of retail space. So for me, I'm torn on this, although I feel like I'd be leaning towards the expansion in this particular instance, just because I feel like it sends the wrong message to someone who's been in our community who has a mom and pop business that they've developed, and it's a logical expansion plan. It's an improvement for the community. He's going to be investing a significant amount of money in this business, and I think saying no would not be the right thing. However, I do not support the concept of this continuing to happen beyond this point in Los Gatos, because I feel like, as some of the speakers said, Ginger Rowe, Ms. McRae, that this is a problem that has been trending for a while. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. I have very similar thoughts to everything that's gone before us here tonight. And I think we have to make sure that we keep our eye on the ball. Our intention is to maintain and enhance the vibrancy of our downtown business community. It is the heart of the town. I think there's no question, if we spend some time downtown, and it is a gathering place for everyone in town. It's a gathering place for young and old. It's a place for us to socialize. It's a place for us to go for entertainment and culture. And it has a unique vibrancy that you don't find, I think, anywhere else in the valley. And I'm including Santana Row in that, because I have actually gone into Santana Row and found that I wasn't attracted to that, although there are a lot of people there. I think that what we have is unique, and we, as the shepherds of the downtown, need to make sure we understand what makes that unique and how we can protect it. But I do think that we have to remember a few things. We have noticed some businesses leave, and it's been kind of a generalization. Oh my God, businesses are leaving. But you have to put this in the context of each individual property and what's occurring. Someone leaves because they've decided to retire. Seems their prerogative. Someone leaves because their rent has been increased in a significant way. Someone decides to downsize to a single site from 2 sites. The corporate office decided, we're going to pull the plug. I personally think that the highest risk to us is not from the independents going away, but from the corporates, because the independents tend to look at this as their life. And if the belt needs to be tightened a little bit, they'll go do that, and they'll sustain. And the corporates tend to look at this in kind of a more removed bottom line focus, and so we see borders go out. I think if we've come to love these individual businesses, whether it's corporate or independent, then we feel the loss. Now, I know there are some communities that it wouldn't make any difference, because there's no focus on the community. There's no focus on the character of the business district. It's not fun to go there. But because we have a good time in our downtown, I think we want to sustain it. And when a business goes away, we do feel it. But I think it's also clear that we are a very popular downtown. And as one business goes out, there are usually one or two other businesses who want to come in the queue, waiting to come in. We don't necessarily see the sign on the window, but we know because of our own experience that that is what's occurring. The idea of retail changing, yeah, of course it's changing. But as Councilwoman McNutt indicated so eloquently, you can't sit in front of your computer and get the kind of experience you have standing on the street at Main and North Santa Cruz. Just doesn't happen. You're not going to go into the section of a particular product on your website and be able to have the same experience that you have if you're perusing the various small businesses in the downtown. It just doesn't happen. And I think that's our gift, and that's what we have to maintain, is the fact that we're offering an experience that you're not going to get. I think we're going to be extremely competitive. In fact, the more we go to the online merchandising, the more we're going to get an attracted base, because people like to do what they can do in our downtown. The concern about everything going corporate, it's not going to happen. We have policy that says that no more than 20% of our individual storefronts will be corporate. And that means 80% is going to be independent. And that gives us, as the council and the planning commission, the opportunity to use the conditional use permit to do something that most communities can't do, and that is make those kinds of choices. There's no fear on my part that we're going to go all restaurant, because our policy says if it's a restaurant use, it can stay a restaurant use, but we're not adding new restaurants. And if you look at this, that's really the case. In the downtown, we're not adding new restaurants. You don't take a retail space that is not already aligned with a restaurant and create a new restaurant. We're not adding an extra Gardino's. Gardino's is proposing to expand. And I think it's fair to say that it's the mix that works, and it's the proper mix that allows us to maintain our vibrancy. And I think we're protected because of the things that we've done. We can't protect ourselves from a property owner who decides to try to go for a higher lease, and that's their prerogative. But what we can do is look at our ratio of 20/80 and make sure that we continue to encourage the inflow of independents that successfully work in our downtown. Someone else said, it's a question of a reasonable request. And I think that's an interesting point, a reasonable request. Gardino's is a very small restaurant. I have sat in that window many a time watching people gathering on the sidewalk and somewhat frustrated because they want to be inside. And we're inside the fishbowl looking out, thinking we made it in time. And secondly, that, you know, there are people who would like to have this experience who are not gonna. From my point of view, I think that makes this request reasonable, that an expansion is probably appropriate. Now, in terms of a couple of the points made, I think the question of the time needs to be evaluated by council. I think it's been asked a couple of times. Make a compelling argument to extend the time frame. I don't know if that's been done yet. In terms of the food service counter, which could be mistaken for a bar by someone, I guess I would ask the question, this isn't a standalone bar. All of our restaurants that serve alcohol have in some fashion a place in the restaurant to serve alcohol, and they serve it with food. And I appreciate the comments Mr. Kays made about kind of the changing nature of the restaurant business. I'm going to take him at face value because I'm not aware of that. But, you know, the issue for me would be, okay, we would also need to really define whether or not, if this were a bar by standard definition, not a standalone bar, but a bar within our restaurant context, is that something that's negative? Okay. I don't know about you, but every once in a while, if I go to a place like Forbes Mill, we will get an hors d'oeuvre and sit at the bar, maybe have a small plate. That does happen. It happens all over town, and it doesn't necessarily mean that there is a problem. One of the things we look at is how many calls for service for law enforcement have occurred in this particular operation. We've got none. So it's a fairly good track record. So those would be my issues and my interest, and I'm at this point interested in any other member of council to become more clear or to make a motion.
I have a question for staff regarding the ordinance about the retail use conversion. I think Diane said it was 2021 or something. Ms. McNair, Councilmember.
2021.
2021. So when, if you could, give us a little bit of background on that, when was that enacted and why? What was the background on that?
So it was adopted in 1996, and the history that staff provided at the Planning Commission hearing was that it was done close to the Loma Prieta earthquake and was enacted to maintain the balance in the downtown. The policy doesn't speak to office specifically. It speaks to retail and restaurant, and specifically offers the opportunity for the deciding body to review the mix of uses downtown and determine whether a new application for a restaurant displaces the mix or disrupts it in a manner that the town council would not want to see, and that would perhaps have a negative impact on the downtown.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilwoman McNutt.
Thank you. I don't actually remember. I wasn't on council or, at that time, and it doesn't really matter to me what may or may not have been the conversation. I actually think it might have been sparked by, at that time, I think is when Saratoga started changing, and we were also horrified about the possibility that's really what kind of got it going in Los Gatos to protect us. And I'm not ready for a motion yet because I'm still struggling with this. And I'll tell you the two things that's kind of popped up. One is I had made note and I'd forgotten of a quote from someone on Planning Commission, and it kind of dovetailed with what Mr. Leonardis was saying. The Planning Commission quote was, "I might be voting differently if this was another restaurant coming into that space." And Mr. Leonardis' concern about wanting to give Gardino's this opportunity, but then closing the door and doing some kind of moratorium. So both of those, the way I would interpret both of those is we really think this policy is good. We're really concerned about preserving retail space. But again, we feel loyalty to this one particular business, and I'm having problems with making a decision on that basis. So I'm still struggling here.
If I might, I would be opposed to any kind of moratorium because the flexibility that allows the Planning Commission and Council to look on this as a case-by-case basis means that it's not the easiest decision in the world. Look at the number of people who have a concern about this and came either to clarify for us their issues with what we might lose if we moved strongly down this path, or to support a local business that has served the community very well. I mean, this, I'm sure, is something that is not necessarily unique to Los Gatos, but definitely represents the best qualities of our town, because we really care about what we've got, and we don't want to do something that's going to jeopardize that. So to say this is the last one, I can't go there. Okay, I would assume that that there may be another worthy individual who brings this case forward. Just like I would assume that it's quite possible that that we will have an independent go into a space that is currently used by a corporate. So the difficulty in this job is that it's not so formulaic that we can say, that's it, just follow the rules, because the rules are set up to be able to respond to the immediate situation in our environment. And I think that's what we've got here tonight, and that's why it's difficult. I frankly have driven by the site numerous times, and in so doing, looked at that little space and thought, that's a really cute little space for retail. And I must admit, it has been something that's been difficult, because if you just walk the downtown, and it's the multiplicity of really unique spaces that gives the town the character in its business community, and we have to be very, very careful about losing that. But at the same time, there are some compelling reasons to appropriately consider the application in front of us. And I think the Planning Commission did a good job. I do agree that there was too much conversation about the changing face of retail, because I think it did not consider some of the realities of what we have that most communities don't. But in terms of the analysis of what we're gaining by this process and their approval, and even the two members that chose not to approve did not say they were against the proposal. They felt that, in looking at 2021, that they needed some clarification from council. And I think that's really what we're engaged in tonight, is clarifying this for not only the Planning Commission, but for our public. So my sense is it is a difficult decision. It is a conflicted decision, and I would assume that at a certain point we'll be able to draw close to this by a motion. That's the third time I've used the word motion, so I just want to make sure we're all keeping count on this, okay? Any other comments? Yes.
Mr. Mayor, if I could follow up on your comments. I'm not necessarily in support of a permanent moratorium on this type of event happening, but perhaps, a moratorium until we can review this particular ordinance that may or may not be applicable in its entirety by today's standards. After reviewing the Planning Commission minutes, it seems as though there was a lot of struggle with this among some of the senior members of the Planning Commission, as whether it were still relevant or not. So for what it's worth, I realize we want to keep our flexibility, but at the same time, this is obviously something that keeps coming up, and in the future it might be easier if we hear this publicly or consider amending it down the road. So.
Thank you. Any other comments from council?
I actually have a question for the mayor. In your comments a few minutes ago, you alluded to you have not heard enough on support for you have not heard enough information regarding the request for the expanded hours. And I'm just curious how you would expect to get more information on that towards a motion.
All right. Probably a clarification would be, I have not heard a compelling reason. I may not be interested in seeking further clarification. Okay. We're losing our audience.
Mr. Mayor, I have a comment on the expanded hours. Based on Mr. Gillo's record, not having any incidences in running his operation for so many years, I find that commendable, and I'd be willing to take a chance with the hours being expanded. And then, of course, I think we're in the process of coming up with a new alcohol policy, and I think there was agreement at one of the previous meetings about Pedro's, or was it about reverting to the new policy when that gets enacted, whatever that policy may be.
Okay. Would you care to make that into a motion?
Need a little help with this. Okay, so after the hearing, I'm assuming there's no more comments coming from Any council members?
Looks that way.
Okay. So I would like to move to approve the conditional use permit U10-023 and then adopt the resolution approving a request to expand the existing restaurant Gardino's to add the seating, the full alcoholic beverage service, and modify the hours of operation on the property zoned C2.
And you're referencing to the attachment 2 that would present each of those issues. That would be the if you look at attachment 2, it has all of the resolution related to the conditional use permit.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And in that motion, are you interested in including anything regarding no change of hours as proposed, and also the issue of the implementation of the new alcohol policy when that finally is put in place?
That is correct.
All right. So we have a motion. Vice Mayor.
Can I get some clarification? I think we're working on an entertainment policy, not alcohol. Is that not, am I missing something?
We're looking at both entertainment and revising the alcoholic beverage policy as well.
Right.
Okay.
That was my understanding. Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second? I will second that. Okay. Now, there's a question for Ms. Savage for council.
Can staff also just remind the council that there is a condition for community benefit that was recommended in the staff report?
And that was the 2 benches in front of the theater, correct?
Correct.
Is that included in the motion in the second?
Yes, and it would be included in the second as well. Okay. Now, just a reminder, we have 4 members on council. Okay. If we have a split, then the motion fails. Okay. Any further discussion? Ms. McNutt.
Well, clearly I'm going to have to vote, so I'm going to have to make up my mind here really soon. It's with great heartache that I'm not going to be supporting the motion. There is the one portion of the motion that I can support is moving to full alcohol beverage service. I think that's fine. And expanding their hours more than what they have now, but maintaining it within the alcohol beverage policy. I don't see anything extraordinary about this business that they should be favored with additional hours any more than any other business. I really liked Mr. Leonard's comment, or referring to this as a starter space for a starter home for retail. And as we had testimony from 2 business owners here in town who started in smaller spaces and then moved into larger spaces, I don't think we're sending a message that we are unfriendly to business. And it may be that if this motion fails, that Gardino's will just have to look for a different space if their business plan is to expand the space and not just maintain the successful formula they've had for 20 years. So I'm going to vote no.
Okay, we haven't called for the vote yet, but foretelling, yes. Councilman Leonardis.
Mr. Mayor, if I may follow up to Councilmember McNutt's comments. So much of the restaurant business is dependent on your location and your established location, and Gardino's has been in that spot for such a long time. For them to find another spot in the downtown area, I think would be very difficult, and for them to expand, I think would be very much common sense, even though we are losing that retail space. I would hate to see if his plans to call for expansion, he has to compete with a new restaurant opening up at the old Chart House location, which is much larger, and will probably be asking for a full liquor license as well. And I just think, he's been working out of that space for so long, it's kind of like innovate or die in this economy. So I look at this as an opportunity for him to survive, in the long run, as opposed to working out of this outmoded space or possibly having to find another location and losing his clientele and his established business, and possibly going to another neighborhood such as Willow Glen or downtown Campbell. So those are my thoughts.
And I would also want to remind us that unless there were another restaurant space that opened up in downtown, there'd be no place to move, because we do not open new restaurants in the downtown, except in spaces that are currently restaurants. So it's kind of like a catch-22, I'd say. Vice Mayor.
There is nothing I would like more than to be able to support the motion. I can't. For some reasons, you've made it easy, because I don't see a compelling reason to expand the hours beyond what we currently provide in the policy. I have to divorce myself from the applicant and the use. And again, not to beat the dead horse, but Councilmember Leonardis's reference to starter home for business is actually a compelling argument against his own motion. And I'm still troubled for any motion that would come that I could support. I still am troubled by the food service counter as well. So I will not be supporting the motion.
All right, and I think everyone has made his or her comments, so I will call the question. We have a motion to approve the conditional use permit, U10-023, and to adopt the resolution approving the request to expand Gardino's Restaurant to add seating, full alcohol beverage service, and modify hours of operations on property zone C2 as noted in attachment 2. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
No.
Okay, the motion fails. Do we have another motion? All right. Councilwoman McNutt.
Thank you. I'm not exactly sure technically how to do this, but I would like to move to approve the sections of the conditional use permit that allow full alcohol beverage service with meal service, and to expand the hours of operation to the maximum allowed under alcohol beverage policy.
Comments from the attorney? So we're bifurcating the resolution.
So it would be to strike the clauses dealing with the expansion in the new space and adding new seats.
Yes.
Could I ask a clarification? We want to have a second yet, but clarification. So the one thing that you're asking for is the alcohol approval.
And they can expand the hours.
And the hours.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And that's it. So the resolution would merely have to reflect those things. And as the manager points out, then deletion of anything that was additional, such as the added seating as well.
Well,
No, I mean,
no added seating.
added seating would
no
be
space
denied.
for it.
Right.
Just the resolve.
No community benefit, because we make them put benches in.
Okay. All right. Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. I see no discussion. The manager and attorney look like they are engaged in some
We are
process. We need to
quickly
know.
going through doing modifications to the actual resolution. Because they're statements of what you're considering, we would not be changing the whereas clauses, but under the resolved, and this is on page, unnumbered page 3 of attachment 2, the number 1 resolve would be to strike add seating and to change the word expand to allow. So the CUP application U10-032 to allow an existing restaurant to provide full alcoholic beverage service and modify hours of operation up to the alcohol beverage policy.
You know, Mayor, I know we're trying to do this all in one night, but this could be an instance where you might want to bring the rewritten resolution back, because it feels a little too complex.
Either later tonight or the next meeting as a consent item.
Go back to our old format of having it show up in the next meeting?
Because there's also changes to the conditions we'd need to make.
That would be acceptable rather than trying to write it here at the dais. But that means that the motion would have to pass. So let's, before we get heavily involved in that, Madam Attorney, any concerns or issues with the proposal as stated?
No concerns, except that if the maker of the motion could perhaps add the findings that support the motion might be of assistance to the council. And then in the event that there is, appears to be consent of the council, or certainly an indication of approval, if staff could have 5 or 10 minute break, we believe that we may be able to recraft the resolution sufficient to be adopted this evening.
All right, if I understood you correctly, there's no need to reframe the resolution if this motion doesn't pass, however. And therefore, I would not want you for us to take a break, go out and reframe the motion, reframe the resolution, and come back and find that it was not necessary. Can you do it subsequent and return at the next council meeting with that?
We could do that as well.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion on the motion? Yes.
Well, the attorney wanted me to make the findings, which are actually spelled out on part of attachment 1 in the packet, related to, on the second page, related to alcohol beverage, but I think those all apply. Does not have a history of complaints. It will not impact adjacent residential communities adversely, and I would assume that would be enough. That's fine. That's usually what we talk about. Okay.
All right, so the findings have been entered into the record. No further discussion? We have a motion and a second.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I would just like to get some clarification on the hours of the operation, this Sunday through Thursday, as well as the Friday and Saturday and holidays that's being proposed.
It would be the same as what everyone else has downtown, or most everyone else has downtown. And so I believe that is 11 during the week and 1 a.m. on Fridays, Saturdays. See, it's the far column, alcohol beverage policy hours.
Thank you.
The only change from the applicant's request would be the weekday nights closing at 11 instead of midnight.
Right.
Weekends stay the same as
Thank you.
requested in the policy.
All right, anything further? All right, no further questions. I'm gonna call the question. All those in favor of the motion indicate.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. That motion carries. I have a question for staff. So in effect, what we have done is denied the ability of Gardino's to expand into the retail space adjacent. But we've allowed them to increase their hours with the conformance to the alcohol policy.
And to add full alcoholic beverage service.
All right. All right. That concludes this item.
Thanks, Jennifer.
We are going to take a 3.5-minute break, okay? Starting right now. are back in order. The next public hearing is number 7. This is a Plan Development PD 08004, an Environmental Impact Report EIR 0900 on property located at 15881 Linda and 5950 Stephanie Lane. And it's Mission Way Partners who are the applicants. And this is very specific in what we're asked to do. And I turn to staff for staff report. And it looks like Ms. Rooney is going to take the lead.
Good evening, Mayor Przinski and Town Council members. The action before you tonight is to recertify the final Environmental Impact Report 0901 and ratify and reaffirm Plan Development Application 08004. The project is located, as the Mayor indicated, at 15881 Linda Avenue and 1950 Stephanie Lane. Staff has a very brief presentation for you. Before beginning this presentation, however, we'd like to note that there was a fairly extensive desk item prepared for this application, and it responds to 10 comments that were received from one individual in particular. For the public's benefit, copies of the desk item, and there are a number of copies, are available on the table in the lobby. It's important to note that the Town Council approved the plan development application and certified the final environmental impact report in January of 2010. And therefore, this item before the Council tonight does not reopen that approval. As the Town Council is aware, the project was subject to a lawsuit, extensive litigation, and court review. Since the project approval, the court has carefully reviewed the final EIR and found that it adequately addressed all but one comment. And that was actually a form letter from the State Department of Toxic Substances Control, or DTSC. In compliance with the court's decision, the town's environmental consultant prepared an addendum amendment to the final EIR, which clarifies the response to the DTSC letter. This response is contained as attachment 2 to your staff report. Based on this response, DTSC submitted a letter dated March 29, 2011, and included as Exhibit C to attachment 2, which clarifies their original comments and concludes that DTSC does not have regulatory authority or will require further soil or groundwater analysis on this site. The addendum amendment resolves the court's concerns for the inadequate response to the original DTSC form comment letter. And since the court determined that it would not be necessary for the town to vacate the prior approval of PD 08004, the only action before the Town Council tonight is to adopt the resolution that's attached to your report that recertifies the final environmental impact report 0901 and ratifies and reaffirms the project's approval for PD 08004. This concludes our formal presentation. We have legal staff, planning staff, and engineering staff here to answer any questions, including if the council would like to have us summarize what the desk item contains.
All right. First, before we go to any further comments from council, I'd like at this point for the council to declare if there's been any contact with applicants or any of the individuals involved in this. And I will start. I have had contact this week with Mr. Kreitz, and that's in terms of this particular evening's discussion. Of course, we've had previous contact when it's been before council earlier with the applicant and the appellant in both cases. Anyone else? Yes, Vice Mayor.
I've had some email correspondence with Mr. Kreitz and email correspondence back and forth once with Mr. Garner.
Okay. Yes.
And I met with Mr. Kreitz.
I met with Mr. Kreitz.
I met with Mr. Kreitz last week, and in 2008, I corresponded with Mr. Kreitz about an initiative process. It was informational only. I also spoke on the phone today with Steve Guzzetti, and I just want everybody to know, since I'm new to this issue, I was elected last November, that I reviewed all the materials for tonight's meeting in advance. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, and then we did have an extensive desk item. We have had a lot of information forwarded us. I would ask if Ms. Rooney could do a brief summary, because I know we've all had a chance to read the documentation in front of us. Yes, or the attorney.
I'd be happy to do that. In your desk item, we received, apparently over the weekend, both on Saturday and Sunday, emails from David Kreitz. We received a letter to Town Council, also from Mr. David Kreitz today, as well as late last week, some council questions for town staff regarding 15881 Linda Avenue. Those are in your packet, and those came in at such a time where the desk item was the first opportunity that staff could respond. So as you walk through your desk item, there is a staff response to the correspondence from Mr. Kreitz that answers the questions that were raised and concerns. Also received late this afternoon, dated May 2nd, 2011, to the Town Council is a letter from Andy Faber, the attorney from Berliner Cohn, who represents the town as well as the applicants in the defense of this matter.
All right, thank you. Any questions from council on the materials we received? All right, seeing none. Any further discussion from staff before we go to public? Seeing none, we do have some individuals who would like to speak tonight to item 7, and I would ask anyone in our public who wants to speak to this item, please fill out one of our buff cards that's in front of you and bring it to our clerk, and we will include you in the discussion. The first presenter is David Kreitz. And I would remind everyone that there is a 3-minute opportunity to speak, and the light indicator when it hits the yellow means it's about 30 seconds left. Mr. Kreitz.
I'm David Kreitz from 15900 Roshan Terrace, and since you're being asked to reaffirm the approval, then clearly the approval is before you. Town staff is asking you to approve a project or reaffirm a project that is a, quote, exception to the town's codified mandatory subdivision ordinance, which sets a minimum width for subdivision streets. What they are asking you to do is better known as breaking the law. Exercising discretion where the law gives you no discretion is a violation of your oath of office. Staff's position is that plan developments can violate codified law. The reality is that Los Gatos PDs have the only power that they have is granted them in the Los Gatos Town Code. In an Orinda case, the appellate court upheld the PD rezoning, but only insofar as it conformed with their city code. In a Millbrae case, the appellate court upheld the PD rezoning, but only insofar as it conformed with their city code. Los Gatos Town Code Chapter 29, Article 8 sets out exactly what zoning regulations apply and don't apply to planned developments. It says that since PDs are rezoning, they don't have to conform to the zoning rules of the underlying zone. So in this case, they don't have to conform to the residential standards in Chapter 9, Article 4. But the PD zoning regulations specifically say that the subdivision regulations do apply to PDs. Note, too, that the subdivision regulations themselves say that they apply to all subdivisions, which means PDs too. And finally, note that PD zoning is a zoning tool. It only removes the applicability of some zoning regulations. It clearly does not remove the applicability of subdivision regulations. That would be like trying to say that PDs don't have to conform to the Los Gatos building regulations, or Los Gatos garbage collection regulations, or Los Gatos transfer tax regulations. That would be breaking the law, just like the town staff is asking you to violate your oath and break the law in this project. And don't think that Judge Nichols' ruling in our court case absolves you from having to follow the law. He did not review the Los Gatos law. He only said that the Los Gatos Town Council is the best body to understand and enforce the town code. If he had reviewed it, he would have enforced the plain meaning of the town code just as you must. I urge you to reject the project as proposed. It's a losing battle and will only reflect poorly on you if you support it.
Thank you, Mr. Greitz. Timur Engin.
Thank you, and good evening. My name is Timur Engin, and I live across the creek from the proposed project. So I want to talk about the California Department of Toxic Substances. They gave the town their unvarnished opinion on toxic substances on this property, and that was in their March 23rd, 2010 letter to the town. And in it, they said, and I'll quote, "The level of residual chemicals in the soil and or groundwater is unknown unless an environmental assessment is done. Therefore, DTSC recommends that soil and possibly groundwater sampling be performed at this site for chemicals from past agriculture operations. The sampling results should be discussed in the EIR, and any screening levels or criteria that are used in making a determination whether detected contaminants are found at concentrations that pose a risk to human health or the environment should be identified." That's what they said. Here we are, the second day of Building Safety Month. And what the staff is proposing is that for this multi-million-dollar project, we send new residents to Los Gatos to live in a place the California Department has already said likely contains chemicals. And we're not going to spend $300 or $400 to test to see if those chemicals are present? I don't think that that's appropriate in May 2011 Building Safety Month. Now, I know the town wants to support Mr. McElroy. That's a noble goal. I also know that the town wants to increase its tax revenue, particularly in these economically challenging times, also a noble goal. But the problem is that the town has succumbed to the developers overreaching. And as Mr. Kreitz mentioned, as we've said in court numerous times, they're violating the town code. And what has that brought the developer? What has that brought the town? Well, the town received no revenue from any house on the project for the last 6 years. None. Litigation for Mr. McElroy. He's had to pay $200,000 just to our attorneys, not to mention the fees he's had to pay to the venerable firm of Berliner Cohen. And I know that Andy's here tonight, and I know he's billing for this time. What else do we have? We have the Garners suing the McElroys. I don't know. Have you guys read the complaint that's been filed in California Superior Court? The Garners are basically saying that the McElroys defrauded them pertaining to this project. Now, so why are we here today? The one interesting thing in this complaint is it says that the bank is going to pull their loan. This is not really where the McElroys want to be. So I'm asking you to help the McElroys help themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Timur. Okay.
Oh, I'm over. Okay, thank you. So any questions?
Seeing none.
Thank you.
Mr. Andrew Faber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Andy Faber, 16321 Ridgecrest Avenue, Monte Sereno. We are here for a narrow issue, and that issue is that Judge Nichols has ruled out of all the challenges to the zoning, to the subdivision ordinance, to the tree ordinance, to flooding, to FEMA, to this and that, as well as all the FEIR issues that were raised. The only thing that's a problem is one response to one comment from DTSC, and that's, as you see in the staff report. In response, the EIR consultant has done considerably more work, amplified the response, I should say, come out with the same conclusion, however, which is that further testing is not required, thus satisfying exactly what Judge Nichols has asked for. Now, I want to respond to a couple of comments that were made. The issue about the planned development zoning and the subdivision, they are not violative. The planned development zoning is a structure that the town is allowed to use to assure flexibility.
for environmentally sensitive sites like this where you can cluster homes slightly, develop streets that are narrower than normal perhaps. This is a little cul-de-sac street, by the way. Enhance the creek and riparian habitats, and do it in the same general density that you would do under straight zoning. This project was a poster child for planned development zoning. It doesn't conflict with the subdivision ordinance of the town, and that's what Judge Nichols ruled. All these issues were in front of him, and about a month and a half ago, he issued his opinion that said the town's interpretation of its ordinance is correct. There is no breaking the law. There is no violation of the subdivision code. The PD ordinance says that development standards shall be set by the development plan. That includes density, it includes location of sites, size of subdivided properties, widths of streets and sidewalks. All of that was challenged in court. The PD ordinance says that you can develop land in accordance with the underlying zoning or with the precise plan that's given in the PD ordinance. And then it says the land shall be subdivided in conformity with regulations of the applicable zone. The applicable zone is the PD zone. In other words, the general development plan. So the subdivision has to follow the zoning. That's the interpretation that the town made last fall when you approved this project. That's the interpretation we told Judge Nichols you made, and that's the interpretation that Judge Nichols says was correct and a reasonable way to interpret your ordinances. So there is no violation here. There's nothing you've done that's wrong. We're really here only to clean up this one small response to comment, and that's the matter that's in front of you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Faber. We have one more card. There is a question. Mr. Faber?
Yes.
Councilwoman Spector would like to ask a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do you have to return now to the court, to Judge Nichols, for the FEIR?
Yes, we will have a supplement, we will have a return to him with, if the council approves this tonight, we will have a return to him with the record that's made tonight. And we will ask to be discharged from the original writ.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spector. All right, our next speaker and the last speaker card that we have is Mr. Tom Mangano.
Tom Mangano, 112 Panorama Way. I didn't even know this was coming up tonight until I read the staff report. And the thing that grabbed me in the staff report is that it said, well, the judge only asked for this one more document. Well, this is the third time staff has come to you and said, this is the staff report. I mean, approve this and we're clear. This is the third time. And what's happened to me in the last 6 or 7 weeks, I found out that we don't even monitor all the mitigations that are in this document that you may approve tonight. And I think that you ought to make sure staff is sure that this is the last document they need. And you ought to make sure that staff is monitoring all the mitigations that are in this EIR. Because again, I submit to you, it did not happen in 15928 Union Avenue. And what guarantee do you have that's going to happen this time? I know developers do what they know they can get away with. And if developers know that they're not monitoring EIRs, they're not going to do it. That is proven on 15928, and the same thing will happen. I think you ought to send this back to staff and have them prove that they're going to, if you're going to approve it, at least monitor the mitigations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mangano. There are no more speaker cards. Is there anyone else in our public who wishes to speak to this at this point? Seeing none, we're going to close the public portion and look to council for a discussion or a motion. I offer an opportunity. It looks like the Vice Mayor wants to say something.
I'll state for the record that I've gone back and I have reviewed everything that has come through that we have dealt with on this application. So part of this motion is with that as a background. I'm going to move that we adopt the resolution and recertify the FEIR EIR 09-001 as provided as attachment 1 in our packet, and ratify and reaffirm the prior approval of the Linda Court project applications PD 08-004 and S08-014 through S08-020.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by the Vice Mayor and seconded by Councilwoman McNutt. Any further discussion? Councilwoman Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a question for staff, probably the town attorney. The second portion of that motion moves to ratify and reaffirm the prior approval. In the prior time that this was before us, I did vote to approve the EIR, but I voted against the PD. On the other hand, I do understand that the PD has gone before the court, and the court has found it acceptable. So I don't know if I can see myself ratifying based on what the court did, but I don't know if I could reaffirm since I voted against it before.
What's before you tonight is a clarification of an issue on the final EIR that we are asking council to recertify the final EIR. In conjunction with that, we're asking the council to basically take a vote and indicate whether or not you still support the PD zoning as it currently has been approved by this council and upheld by the court. Just like in any other matter that comes back to the council, council members are always able to look at the information and judge it based on what's before them for that evening and take into account all of the information that has come before them. For instance, even though Councilmember Leonardis was not even on council when the matter came before, he stated on the record that he's read and reviewed all the prior material, has become familiar with it. Staff provided Mr. Leonardis with the DVDs, the final EIR, the reports that came forward to council on September 7th and September 20th of 2010, and all of the backup information sufficient that he could participate tonight, even though he didn't participate the first time. Likewise, the council member Spector's question is, despite what you decided the first time, based on your review of the information and the information before you tonight, you have the ability to make a decision based on your current judgment.
Please.
All right, then it actually would have been easier for me had they been split out, the two motions. But since they are grouped together, I will be supporting, I would have supported that portion of the motion to adopt a resolution to recertify the FEIR. But since I voted against the PD last time on the basis of the condition having to do with ANS, and since that still exists in the same form that it was in last September, I will not be able to support the motion because of the second portion of it.
So, a question for the maker of the motion. Would you like to amend your motion?
Mr. Mayor, yes, I think for clarity purposes, I would like to bifurcate it.
All right, so the motion will be bifurcated. The seconder of the motion must also agree?
Yes, sir.
All right, so the motion now is to adopt the resolution to recertify the FEIR 09001 as contained in attachment 1, and the seconder has agreed. So, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. And now, the second motion.
The second motion would be to ratify and reaffirm the prior approval of the Linda Court project applications PD-08-004 and S08014 through S08020.
Okay. And seconder?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Councilwoman Spector.
I will not be supporting this portion of the motion, but I want to be specific. It's for the same reason that I didn't support it last time, which is because of the architecture and site condition in the PD that I had favored the A&S going back to the Planning Commission, and that was not a part of the conditions. So that was the basis last time, and that is the basis this time.
All right, any further comments or questions? Yes, Councilman Leonardis.
I would be abstaining my vote on that second part of the motion.
Abstaining your vote?
On the motion.
You provide a reason, please.
Last time, I was not here to vote on that. That was, I guess, Mike Wasserman who voted in favor. And even though I've reviewed all the materials, I feel like, I wasn't part of the public hearings. And I think that, in all fairness to both parties, both of them wanted me to be here tonight and review the materials and be part of the hearing. However, I feel that abstaining my vote is my best choice. So,
thank you. Duly noted. All right, we will call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No. Abstain.
And it passes 3-1 with one abstention. Okay. All right, and that brings us to then item number 8. This is an ordinance amending Chapter 23 of the Town Code regulating news racks operated or located or projecting into the public right-of-way. And there was a desk item that appeared to correct a recommendation. I believe it was a desk item. It was an addendum. Did we receive it on desk, or was it sent to us?
It was sent on Friday.
It was sent on Friday. All right. So we all have it. Duly noted. And so we would turn to Ms. Von Bork, who's going to make the staff presentation.
Great. Thank you, Mayor and Council, and good evening. The item before you this evening is the introduction of an ordinance amending Chapter 23 of the Town Code regulating news racks in the public right-of-way. In particular, the proposed amendment introduces a special news rack district to address concerns related to safety, accessibility, and design in the downtown. In 2009, downtown businesses and community members expressed concerns about news rack placement related to safety and accessibility and design. Staff inventoried the news racks downtown and launched an extensive enforcement effort to bring non-compliant units into conformance with the code. In 2010, Council identified a community character strategic goal to formulate a program that would ensure the appropriate design and placement of news racks in the downtown. As a result, staff developed a pilot program that would be used as a framework for developing the proposed news rack ordinance amendments before you tonight. The goals identified for the pilot program, safety, accessibility, distribution, and design, translate to those of the proposed amendments. To translate the goals into code, the following elements were included in the proposed ordinance amendment: the identification of a special news rack district downtown, establishment of design criteria, identification of rack locations, and parameters for rack ownership. The proposed district boundaries are consistent with the Central Business District guidelines and the C2 zoning district downtown. As you can see from this graphic, the area identified in red is that district. Staff felt that this was an appropriate boundary to establish, as it's consistent with how the downtown has been defined in the past. The design criteria for the special news rack district is consistent with the Central Business Design Guidelines. Proposed colors are earth tones and complementary to other street furniture elements downtown, such as the benches and trash receptacles. The photos that you see here on this slide are reflective of the existing pilot program. These are located in front of Les Boulangères, if I can pronounce that. In terms of staff proposed rack locations, staff identified criteria to determine the most appropriate rack locations within the special news rack district. 10 locations were identified. These locations will support the number of current publications that are within downtown news racks today. Through the pilot program, staff learned that rack ownership would effectively reduce costs associated with the enforcement and maintenance of the news racks. Therefore, staff is proposing that the town purchase the modular news racks permitted within the special news rack district, as was done with the pilot program. Publishers will be required to obtain a news rack permit and a business license. These fees will be for cost recovery purposes and will help with the maintenance and the enforcement of the news racks in the special news rack district. If council approves the proposed ordinance amendments, the distributors and publishers will be given 120 days to apply for a permit if they don't have a current or active permit. Staff will partner with the publishers on accommodating their placement needs in the allocated 10 locations. In conclusion, the proposed amendments aim to meet the concerns addressed by the community and comply with the established design guidelines and community character strategic goals for news racks within the downtown. The proposed ordinance amendment requires 2 readings. This is the first of those 2 readings. Therefore, staff recommends taking the action posted on the slide. Staff's available for any questions that you may have, and thank you.
All right. Questions from council? Councilwoman Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 4 of the ordinance, I think it's subsections H and I, it talks about affixing the newspaper vendor's identity on the receptacle, whatever you want to call it. Is that going to impact the aesthetics, and how does that work? I looked at your pictures of the existing ones, and it doesn't seem to be any impact, but question.
Yeah, that's a great question. When publishers or distributors come in to apply for the news rack permit, we actually have a special sticker that they affix to the inside of the rack. So as our enforcement staff goes out, we'll be able to open the racks and determine who the publisher is and who the distributor is.
That's why I couldn't see it. Thank you.
All right, good. Other questions? Yes, Councilman Leonardis.
Quick question. I noticed that the diagram in the, of course, report demonstrates the deployment of these in the central business district only. And I was just wondering, the area of North Santa Cruz between Blossom Hill Road and Highway 9 and Los Gatos Boulevard, I know in front of McDonald's there's quite a few of these things. Over by Happy Hound, there's quite a few that are also impeding the public right-of-way, and was just wondering if there's any future plans to replace those as well.
Well, thank you for your question. The purpose of the amendments that you see before you today were to address the concerns expressed about all of the accessibility, safety, and design elements within the downtown only. So no changes were made to any of the requirements for news racks with any other area of the town. Those certainly could be considered at a later date.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Yes, Councilman Spector.
Thank you. Actually, Mr. Leonardis' question was my second question that I didn't talk enough. The aesthetics of the areas that he's talking about, and also the safety and all of those things, I think those are issues. And I actually can't remember the priority, how the council worded the priority. Did we word it just for the CBD?
Correct. It was worded for the downtown.
Okay.
However, if I may, one element that staff can explore further is enforcement of those other additional areas. We've been focusing our enforcement efforts on the downtown, and initially in 2009, when we did enforce the code very strongly, we got some really good response. We really brought the number of news racks that were in the community down, because a lot of them were left vacant for quite a bit of time. And so it enabled us to go ahead ahead and enforce the ordinance as it exists today. What staff can do at this point in time is go out and enforce those other areas to see if it does have an actual impact on the conditions that are outside of the downtown district. Because you're absolutely right, there are elements within the ordinance itself that do address the placement in terms of accessibility and safety. And also if racks have been left vacant, we certainly have the ability to ask the publisher to remove that rack.
And I understand that there's an issue of staff availability, of finance, of economics, but for this one council person, putting all those things aside, looking at the sites outside of the downtown, it would be a good thing for me.
Any other comments? Councilman Leonardis?
I think it would be a good opportunity to develop, a town-wide policy that takes into consideration the future developments that are coming, such as the North 40 and some of the outlying areas. I'm not as familiar with the shopping center on Los Gatos Almaden Road and Union Avenue, if there are any receptacles there currently. But it would be nice if we just had consistency throughout the town with all new receptacles. It just doesn't seem like it's that much money, and it will be largely paid for by the cost recovery. So why stop at just the central business district? That's all.
But we're tonight only considering the central business district. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm assuming that if we were to do that, we would have to do a whole nother special district that would cover the entire town. Is that correct?
I would look to our legal staff for the response.
Can't just expand it.
You certainly couldn't expand it as part of the proposed ordinance before you tonight. We would need to look at that issue. Yes, we could look at, as council members are suggesting, more of a town-wide district and bring that back when, after we've done the research on whether those same issues that resulted in these findings after the pilot study are present.
Okay. Other comments, questions, discussion? I'm impressed with the numbers that you've analyzed. Both the drop off in number of actual units and the coincident drop off in the number of newspapers. This may not be a problem for us in 3 years, but I would think that if we can establish the downtown program and make a fix, then an analysis subsequent to that could be generated related to the rest of the town. But until we have actually completed our process in the downtown, I'd rather not spend staff time or study looking beyond the downtown at this time. Any other comments? Right. I believe it's the chair's prerogative. If we have no further discussion, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak to this matter? We have no cards. This is your chance. We'll be here as long as it takes. All right, I see none, then I think we'll close the public portion. And I would like to direct the clerk administrator to read the title.
Ordinance of the Town of Los Gatos amending Chapter 23 of the Town Code regulating news racks located on or projecting into the public right-of-way.
All right, and I would move to waive the reading. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then I will move to introduce the ordinance and instruct the clerk administrator to publish a summary no less than 5 days prior to adoption.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
I believe that accomplishes our task. Thank you very much, Ms. Van Broek. And seeing nothing else that we need to accomplish, the meeting is adjourned.